Hello and welcome to another video. In today's video, we are continuing with a project that we started a little while ago, which is our second 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic. Now you may remember this machine from two videos we did relatively recently, which were can we make a tractor from spare parts, which were fitting titles, because both for the previous owner and for us this tractor has been used as a parts donor, so it's had plenty of bits pulled off of it in favour of other tractors, namely our 1960 Bolens Ride-a-matic that you see sitting there, which we pretty much finished the project on. And in putting this tractor back together, what we've effectively been doing is working out what parts we still need to make or buy, and working out what jobs we need to do as well. And we think we're pretty much there with parts. There's still some bits that we need to make or buy, but we know where we can get those bits from, which is half the challenge with this tractor. Obviously it's just a donor engine sitting in there at the moment, but we've also got options for that as well, so that's all sorted pretty much. Now the plan for this project is to be a full paint restoration with all of the mechanical bits being done as well, so effectively taking this up to showroom condition hopefully. We'll have to see how well that goes, and the plan was to make sure that we don't repeat ourselves very much, because you've seen most of the mechanical work on the other tractor already. Don't want to be making videos showing the exact same things that we've shown in videos before. So this tractor will now be our main project going forward, hopefully. Obviously, like our previous projects, there will be breaks where we have to wait for parts and stuff like that, seeing as we need to order every single fixing, bushing, bearing, oil seal, literally everything to go on this tractor, and that takes time, especially if stuff has to come from America over the pond to the UK. So there will be breaks, and therefore we'll have projects running alongside this, but this will be our main focus, hopefully, and it may take quite a while because obviously we're doing all the mechanical work and the paint work as well. Another challenge we've got is that some jobs to do on this aren't very videoable, which we've actually done one of those jobs already. The eagle-eyed viewers amongst you may have noticed it if you've got a good memory from what it looked like before. This corner of the chassis here was completely bent around, like bent downwards from some sort of knock in the past on the foot peg. And when we got this out of storage yesterday, we spent the afternoon straightening all of this up, which lift lever had to come off to do that, because not only had this kind of corner been bent down, by doing that this whole section was curved upwards, with the peak being around here, and this whole side had been pulled up as well. But now, if I kind of put a straight edge along there, that's pretty much flat along all of those sections. This bit was curved as well. That's all flat now as well. If I get a straight edge or a right angle on here, you can see that's pretty good too. And also along there as well, that's all straight. So we're pretty happy with that. But that was one of those things that took absolutely ages to do. It's just trial and error using our big 3-foot Kennedy pipe grips, I guess you call these, not too sure. But yeah, using a pair of those, one on somewhere here to keep it still, and then another one further along to actually do the bending. Sorry, to make sure that we weren't kind of twisting it rather than just bending the bits that had been bent in the past. So that's kind of how we went about all of that, but we wouldn't have been able to video that really. So that's what I mean by not very videoable jobs. I'll tell you what, we've got a picture up on the laptop over here, which, screensaver, give it a minute. And that kind of shows you the state that was all in before. You can just see the bend on there. Obviously that should be straight all the way along. It's a horrible angle. So that's what we got rid of yesterday. And We also noticed that the captive nut there, the welds are broken on it. Not sure if that was when it got bent or when we bent it back. That needs re-welding as one of the jobs on the chassis, which will probably be the first thing that we start on once we've stripped this down. So our plan for this project is we're going to start off with chassis work, which we started a bit yesterday afternoon, as I said before. But the remaining jobs on there, we need to weld up this captive nut, as I said earlier. We need to weld down our new chassis to engine mounts that we made, which there's still some existing weld from the previous ones, so that all needs to be ground down and then weld the new ones on there. And there's some stress cracks, notably that one there. So the chassis needs to be bent up there and then weld that crack together, and there's a number of those. And it's much easier to do that sort of work with nothing else on the chassis, because then we can turn it upside down, do all that sort of stuff to make sure that we've filled the cracks and just make sure that this is nice and strong. After that, we will then be reassembling most of the front end and possibly some of the back end. And the whole point of that reassembly is just to make sure that all of the parts fit nicely, because when this is all painted up, we don't want to be forcing things into place. We want everything to fit smoothly, notably bits like the bonnet on the fuel tank straps on the other side. They're probably going to be scraping or close to it, so if we can make them not scrape, that would be preferable. Make sure everything fits bonnet to the grille. And the other things is like the steering column, that's currently against the chassis there, which is not good, so we're going to have to work out a way of moving that away from it. And this, to do that, this kind of dash tower part probably needs to be a bit more vertical than it is. That was forced back that way by our fuel tank support brackets. That might need a bit of bending or modification. All of this we're doing just to make sure that everything slots into place, rather than having to force things into place, because then we'll be scraping paint off, and we really don't want to be doing that at all. And the bits on the rear end that we might have to do is just the fenders and the toolbox, making sure they all fit properly, which these don't actually fit too badly, so that's all right, but we don't want to be hammering stuff, obviously, when it's got paint or primer on. And then once we've got everything fitting nicely, we'll take it all apart again, get everything grit blasted. Wait, no, before we grit blast, we'll do any machining, like the front axle, stuff like that. Then we'll send everything off to get grit blasted, and then straight away into primer. And we're not too sure when we're going to put the bushings and bearings and oil seals in yet. It'll either be once everything's just been put into primer, and then we'll masking tape them up for painting, or we wait until everything's painted and then very carefully install all of those bits. But that's kind of risking scratching the paintwork a bit more, so not too sure about when that's going to happen. Do let us know in the comments your thoughts on that, especially if you've restored machines in the past, what worked better, what didn't work so well, those kind of things. But today we'll be doing the initial strip down so that we can crack on with the chassis work. So we have the chassis on axle stands now, and we just took all four wheels off, and we're going to take this apart in large components like we did on our other 1960 when we did that project, because we felt that worked relatively well, especially since we're going to be reassembling it relatively soon. Keeping things together makes sense, really. So the first thing that's going to come off is the hood and the grille, both together. And we did think about doing this as like a time lapse, but we decided against it now, so we'll just kind of show you the main bits. We already took the screws out of the other side, and that side of the hood, or bonnet as we call it over here in the UK, pinged up, so that shows you part of the problem that we have when it comes to fitting this stuff up. I can already feel there's loads of tension on this bolt as well. So there you go. There's the issue. We need that to fit a lot nicer than that, really. And I'm going to have to kind of hold the grille as this comes off, because these two bolts are the only things supporting it currently. this one. This one feels stiffer than the other one for some reason. All of these bits are going to take up quite a bit of room in their kind of fully assembled state, but as I said before, should be a bit easier for us. And it means less bits should get lost if they're not separated into all of their little bits. Felt like it was kind of loose, but apparently not. There we are, and now, there we are. This is off, and well, it needs to be dumped somewhere. We haven't really sorted out an area to put this stuff yet, which we will do off camera now. We'll now take the scrap block out, and to do this we've got to disconnect the Rideamatic spring here, which is easiest from that end. That's kind of unhooked from the other side, so I'll just set that down there for now. And then we've just got 4 bolts to take off here, and then we'll keep these chassis brackets separate since they're getting welded onto the chassis next, but we'll leave this bracket and the anchor bolt on the block for now. I'll just lift this off now. Kind of expected those engine brackets just to fall off. I'll take that off there. Got off as well. On the block over to the side, and you can see some of the cleaning up work that we've got to do. Try to get rid of some of those cut marks as well. Now for the front axle, and we've done part of it without you in taking this drag link off of the steering quadrant, because you have to wind all of that thread out with an open-ended spanner, and it takes absolutely ages. So we thought we'd spare you that detail. And now just need to undo this center pin, which I'll loosen it off a little bit, and then I got that off. Get that out there in a minute. I think this might be the first time that we've done this, so we'll have to see whether or what state the axle tube is in. Appears to be non-existent so far, because that shouldn't have dropped. However, you can actually see it in there. Not sure how well that shows up on camera. You can see the edge of it glistening there. So it's disintegrated, kind of as expected, really. Oh, on the other side, it's not actually disintegrated that far into it, but we weren't planning on reusing the old one, even if it was in good condition, obviously. But now this whole piece we're going to put to the side and keep together for now, because as we said, we'll be fitting this up again relatively soon, hopefully. The next thing to come off will be this section of the Rideamatic, which we're going to keep separate from this cast part, because that is key to lining up some of the other bodywork on the front end. And when we do our refitting that we were talking about before, that will need to go back on, but the Rideamatic doesn't need to, so we'll keep that off when it comes to doing this whole refitting and reshaping of the front end. So as I said, that will be separate there. We need to take out this temporary bolt that we put through the clevis fork there, and also disconnect it from the brake pedal here, which means taking that bolt fully out and then putting it back in, which is unfortunate because it's spring loaded. But that's kind of what you've got to do to split the two. So we'll do that now and come back to you just as we slide that off. The grub screw on here is now loose, so I can just pull this off, hopefully. That's that off. Take the washer off as well. And then move past. We've disconnected the other 2 points as well, so in theory this can all be slid off now. Sometimes it is a bit of a handful to hold all of this stuff together. And to hold hold it up like this so it doesn't hit the foot brake pedal. What am I stuck on? That needs to come down. There we are, that's all of that out. So we'll put that grub screw kind of locking part on there so we don't lose it. And then this can be put to the side as well. So we're now going to take off the fuel tank support stand, the fuel tank, and the Rideamatic lever all as one. Which, by the looks of it, we didn't actually do up one of the bolts for this when we fitted this up for some reason. So that's that disconnected. And we're just going to leave this bracket or stay or whatever it is on there as well. You can see that's already moving as I'm undoing it. Which is part of the issue with these parts, and which is why we need to refit them up after we've got the chassis sorted. And you can see that's just sunk immediately. Completely the wrong side to do this from, but this one, on the other hand, appears to be loose pretty much. So I assume all the tension was taken up in the other bolt. Thank you. And that is off as well. Thank you to my cameraman for catching that. I think I've got it now. What am I missing? Oh, there we are. That's what it was. Yeah, we'll take that off as a complete unit, and it doesn't need to come apart really until we do the fitting up process again. And suddenly this whole front end looks a bit more emptier. We've now got the steering wheel off, as you can see, which we only just pushed that on there before so that it wouldn't be too hard to get off, but clearly we put a bit more force on than we intended, because we did have to put a puller on this again to get it off, but came off without too many issues, so that's fine. And we do actually have a brand new steering wheel to replace this one, so we won't be having to deal with any of these cracks or anything, or at least not yet, and not for this project. So in the end, it won't be this going back on. Turns out it's actually a Farmall Cub steering wheel, is identical to this, and while they don't make reproduction Bolens Ride-a-matic ones, they do make reproduction Farmall Cub steering wheels. So that's a tip for anyone restoring one of these, because that's pretty much the only way you'll be able to find a reproduction steering wheel. But anyway, the next thing we want to do really is take the column out of the bottom, and to do that we need to take this bolt off, which has the steering quadrant and the sleeve and everything on. So I'll just quickly impact is literally the definition of just quickly doing that. And I'll hide hammer around here. I do it. I might have to give this a gentle tap just to get the gears off of each other. There we are. So that is the sleeve and the quadrant slid out of there, which this is the damaged quadrant. At some point that will be replaced, I think, with a better one that we've got. But I'll just put all of this stuff together. And the next job to do is to take the steering column itself out, which obviously that's a pretty long thing to be taking out of the bottom of the tractor. So it's going to take one of us to lift it up, the other person to be hitting it down to actually get the clearance underneath to take that out. So there's a two-person job, which means we'll be doing it off camera, and we'll come back to you in a minute, hopefully, with that off. We now have the steering column off, and we left one of the bronze bushing parts on there just to make it easier to take off, really. So this didn't come off with too much trouble, and while we had the tractor lifted up, and it was easier to get to the bolts, we took out the 2 bolts for the dash tower as well, and also the 3 bolts that hold this cast part on there, which these were actually on there when they painted them from the factory, but we'll probably paint it separately. So all of those bits are now off and can be stored somewhere else. I think we'll probably take off the fenders, the toolbox and everything like that next. So there's just 2 bolts in there, pretty simple, but they're quite difficult to get to on the other side. And then we'll take off these lift arms and the back plate on the chassis, and that's most of the bodywork off of the back end then. We've turned the bench around now, and to get to the bottom of the bolts that hold the toolbox on, the easiest way to get to them is kind of through the chassis and over all of these diff bits. So we're probably going to have to move the axle stand anyway, but we'll also need to take off this chassis back plate. So we'll do that first, and by the looks of it, we just used a random assortment of bolts that are different sizes because we knew they weren't going to stay on there very long. This might take us a little while to work out what they are, so we'll do these off camera and come back to you. So we've taken those bits off the back now, and you can clearly see through to where the 2 bolts come through for the seat pan, which one is there, the other one is back there. And if I demonstrate why this is so difficult to get to these, if you put socket straight up from here, you're not on this bolt. If you go the other side, you also miss the bolt. So this one's pretty much impossible to get a socket on. There's not enough space for a UJ on your extension either. There's enough space to go straight up for this one, so that one's fine. But that's why the other one is so difficult, and we've actually rounded off the bolts trying to get them off. So that's why they are finger tightness already. And what's left of those old spring washers. Well, these bolts will come off with the fenders. Give it a lift, there we are. And the whole lot comes off as one because the seats mount or seat spring, whatever you want to call it, is kind of slotted into the toolbox, so we don't really have a place to put this yet, so we'll just dump that on the floor. And when it comes to what's left on the chassis, we've got brake pedal here, which that's just 2 bolts to undo. This whole drive section's a bit more complicated to take everything off that shaft and then take that off. Chain needs disconnecting, which there's the link chain there. And at some point when we take all of the diff off, all of this stuff will have to come off as well. So don't know whether we'll do that now or later. We'll see. Now we're going to take the foot peg and this brake pedal off. There we are. Simple enough job to do. And I'll probably leave the bolt with that, but out of there for now. And well, this may be a brake pedal. I don't think we've actually used that yet on our other 1960 Rideamatic. So not sure how effective it is. We haven't really tested that. That's the first one off already.
Just push it straight on.
Okay. Well, that took some doing. That came off. There's 2 nuts in there that I'll retrieve at some point and then put back with those bolts. But that is off now. Bet that hasn't come off since it was put on at the factory, especially seeing as there doesn't seem to be any paint under there, so it would have been on there before they painted the tractor. Now, you may have noticed while I was doing that, there isn't a chain on there. We took that off before this bit of video, and it took us absolutely ages to get it off because, as you'd imagine, the link chain and everything was seized. So that was plenty of work to get that off, and we're now pretty much running out of time. And we also remembered about the fact that this end of the drive system, someone had made a cut to this part to try and get it off easier. So we'd sprayed it before with some releasing agent, spray it with a bit more now, in the hopes that when we come back to this, we should be able to get these off without damaging them even more. Even though we've got a replacement one of these, it'd be nicer if it just came straight off to make it easier for us. So for today, seeing as we are running out of time, we are going to leave it here. The next things to do is to disassemble this front drive kind of mechanism there and the differential on the back end. Once we've done that, this is as stripped down as this tractor can possibly get. Once we've taken both of those systems off, then this needs a good clean, and after that it's ready for the chassis work with the welding and other bits on there. As I said, that's as far as we're going to go today, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.